In France they call me an invader. But none of them saw what I saw that dawn, when I crawled beneath a rusty fence with my knees tearing against the frozen ground. None of them heard the breathing of the men around me, each of us trying not to make a sound, because the smallest mistake could cost us everything. They don't know what it's like to hide for 5 hours in a truck smelling of rotten meat, praying not to cough. I remember when my feet touched French soil for the first time. There was no celebration, no smile, only fear and anger. Fear of getting caught, anger at being forced to become this, a body silently walking through the night, with nothing but the clothes on my back and an old phone in my pocket. Now, years later, I hear them saying I'm a threat, that I steal jobs, that I ruin their culture, but nobody asks what I've lost. Nobody cares to know where I came from, or why. They look at my beard and my skin and think they know everything, but I am not a symbol. I'm a man who had to destroy everything he once was just to keep breathing. And still, here, they look at me as if I were the enemy. My name is Karim. I'm 37 years old. I was born in Aleppo, in northern Syria. I grew up amid car noises, dawn prayers, and the aroma of spices drifting out from kitchen windows. Syria before the war was a lively place. Noisy, yes, but alive. I was an electronics technician. I repaired radios, televisions, and refrigerators. My workshop was small, but it was mine. It stood behind the house my father left me. It was a simple life, but it was my life. When the first signs of war appeared, we didn't believe it would last. We thought it would be like other times, just noise. But then the bombs came, then the blackouts, then the bodies. Everything I was gradually turned to dust, day by day. First, I lost my workshop, then my brothers, each leaving for a different place. Next, I lost my documents, my city, my dignity. But worst of all was losing my wife, not because she left, but because I had to leave her behind, promising I'd come back for her. A promise that even today burns in my throat. That's when I decided to escape, not out of courage, but despair. It wasn't dreams that brought me to Europe. It was desperation, hunger, fear of dying in the street or being taken without reason. It was the certainty that if I stayed, I'd become just another forgotten statistic. I didn't come here to take anything from anyone. I came because everything was taken from me. And yet, in Paris, all I see are eyes following me as if I were a thief, an enemy, as if having a Muslim name were a threat, as if my beard were a sign of danger. They call me an invader, but I never invaded anything. Invading is when you enter armed, imposing force. I entered on my knees, head bowed. I came fleeing, not attacking. I came because there was nowhere else to go. They want me to feel guilty. They want me to apologize for being alive. But I won't lower my head to people who've never watched their mother weep from hunger or their father kneel before a soldier. They speak of laws, borders, rules. But when the world collapses around you, no law matters more than the instinct to survive. And nobody here wants to understand that. They pretend it's simple. They pretend we're all the same, but we're not. They never had to flee with an empty stomach and their heart exploding in fear. I didn't come by choice. I came because I was pushed. Before everything fell apart, I was an ordinary man. I woke up early, went to the mosque, opened my workshop, and returned home at dusk. My wife prepared dinner, and sometimes we'd eat on the living room floor, with pita bread and yogurt. There was no luxury, but there was peace. The television was old, picked up few channels. But on Sundays, I watched soccer with my nephew. I laughed loudly. I slept peacefully. It feels like another world now, another planet. On my street, everyone knew each other. Children ran along the sidewalks. Elderly people sat by their doorsteps. On Fridays, the city smelled of good food and hope. My mother used to say that the smell of food was the scent of blessing, and I believed her. Her kitchen was a temple, the place where the world seemed safe, until it wasn't anymore. It started slowly, like a whisper. First, soldiers appeared on street corners. Then came checkpoints. Soon there were screams at night. Explosions became routine, as if the sky had decided to spit fire. One day, a bomb fell 3 streets from my house. The shockwave threw me to the floor. I ran outside. Half the street was burning, and no one came to put out the flames. I tried to resist. I swear I tried. I'd close the workshop when I heard gunshots, and reopen the next day, as if nothing had happened. But the customers started to vanish. Some fled, others simply disappeared. Electricity came and went. Sometimes we'd go days without power, without signal, without water. The city slowly faded away. like a candle burning out. One day, an armed group entered our neighborhood. They looted everything. They stormed houses, took young men, broke shop windows, and beat the elderly. I remember a woman who lived 2 doors away from me. They found her lying on the kitchen floor. She had just wanted to grab the bread she'd left in the oven. She never stood up again. Nobody did anything. I stopped sleeping. I began hiding money in holes in the wall. My wife cried every night. Our prayers became silent, eyes shut tight in fear. One day I was stopped by a group on the street. They searched me, spat at me, told me my face wasn't trustworthy. I just wanted to buy rice. I went home empty-handed. That was the day I decided. I couldn't live there anymore. Not with that tension, not with the certainty that leaving my home could be my final act. I sold what remained of my workshop for almost nothing. An old customer, who still owed me for repairs, paid me with a watch. I kept that watch. I don't know why. I still carry it with me. It stopped working, but it's the only thing that reminds me of who I was. My wife stayed behind. Her mother was ill, and she refused to leave her. I promised I'd send money and find a way to bring her later, but deep down, I knew it might be goodbye. The last night we slept together, she held my hand so tightly I can still feel her fingers wrapped around mine. She told me not to die. That was all. I left with little money, a backpack, a cell phone, and the broken watch. I hid everything I could in the waistband of my pants. I passed through alleys, past cars, through despair. I met other men who had the same look in their eyes. Dry, hard, empty. We weren't friends. We were survivors, and survivors don't form attachments. We helped each other just enough to keep going. On my final night on Syrian soil, I slept in an abandoned warehouse. I didn't close my eyes. I couldn't. I just listened to the sounds of the dying city. Dogs barking, distant gunshots, voices. My mind was caught in a loop. Will I come back? Will I die on the way? Will I ever breathe without fear again? The idea of going to Europe wasn't a dream. It was the only place that might offer a chance. And France, for me, represented a bit of everything. Work, shelter, a new name. Something to distance me from that smell of smoke and blood that had seeped into my skin. When I finally reached the border, I felt nothing. No fear, no courage. Just emptiness. It was as if my body had already given up and was moving automatically. My soul left behind in the living room of my destroyed house, still waiting for life to return to normal. It never did. And those who see me walking the streets of Paris today, with this exhausted face and empty gaze, have no idea what I've left behind. They think I came by choice. They think I'm here to take something from someone, but they don't see the scars. They don't hear the screams that still wake me in the middle of the night. They'll never smell the burned city the way I did. They see me as a burden, but I was torn from my world. I was broken, yet I still had to keep walking. The first part of the journey was on foot. I left Syria through the north, trying to cross the border into Turkey on a path used by smugglers. There was no map, only the name of a meeting point and a promise that someone would be waiting on the other side. The path went through hills, loose stones, and freezing nights. On the first day, I tore the sole of my sneaker on a rock. I kept walking anyway, with my injured foot, because stopping wasn't an option. I walked with a group of strangers. There were men of all ages, but no one spoke. Silence was the only thing we had in common. Sometimes someone murmured a prayer, other times a groan of pain. We slept on the ground, without tents, eyes open. A cracking branch was enough to make everyone jump, hearts pounding. We lived like animals, never knowing where the hunter might come from. We reached Turkey after 2.5 days of walking. Our legs couldn't take it anymore. Some men were left behind. One fainted and was abandoned there. I didn't look back, not out of cruelty, but because looking back meant weakness, and weakness was something we couldn't afford. In Istanbul, I ended up in a basement with more than 20 people, a tiny space. The air was thick, the heat suffocating, and the smell of sweat mixed with fear made my stomach churn. We slept in shifts. Some lay down while others stood. Clothes were always damp, food rationed. Phones kept constantly in airplane mode to conserve battery. We waited for a phone call, a password, a truck. When the call came, no one said where we were headed, just that I had to get in fast and remain silent. I lay on flour sacks, my head pressed between my knees. I couldn't see anything. I only felt the engine vibrating. My body jolted around as if it weren't mine. I spent a full day inside that truck. No food, no water. Not knowing if I was moving forward or being taken back, I was left in an open field in Greece. From there, another phase of the journey began. Crossing the Balkans, it was like a cruel board game where each move meant new danger. Macedonia, Serbia, Croatia, Hungary. Each country with its own barriers, police, and invisible walls. In none of them were we welcome. In Serbia, I slept in an abandoned parking lot. A fine rain fell, and our clothes clung to our bodies like dead skin. A man beside me coughed blood. Another shook uncontrollably. Nobody spoke. It was as if we'd forgotten how to use language. Words meant nothing in that place. I traveled on foot to Hungary, hiding in pickup trucks, hitching rides with traffickers, paying with the little money I had sewn into the hem of my pants. A crumpled note, a sweaty coin, a favor bought with silence. The price wasn't just money, it was dignity. It was the constant fear of being caught, beaten, or thrown back. In Hungary, I was caught. Border guards pushed me against a fence and searched me as if I were garbage. They tore open my backpack, threw my fake documents on the ground, and laughed in my face. They said nothing. They just left me there, with no food, no direction, no choice. I had to walk back to Serbia and start again. On my second attempt, I managed to sneak onto a freight train. I stayed squeezed between boxes for almost 12 hours. I relieved myself right there. The smell stuck to me for days. When I jumped off, my legs wouldn't obey me, but I kept walking, because to stop meant death. I reached Austria and then Germany. I considered staying there, but the language was a barrier. I knew only a few words. I'd heard it was easier to find work in France. Paris, they said, had places where people like me could start over. I headed for the country that claimed to cherish freedom, liberty, equality, fraternity. Beautiful words, but I still haven't seen them become real. My entrance into France was through the north. There was a camp in Calais called the Jungle. Nothing there seemed human. Tents made from tarps and plastic scraps, people cooking in tin cans, children playing in filthy mud. I stayed there for a week, waiting for a chance to get into a truck headed to Paris. The opportunity came on a cold night. I climbed into the back of a vegetable truck and squeezed myself between crates. The smell was terrible, but that was the least of my worries. My heart beat so loudly I thought the driver would hear. I spent hours in that position. When the truck stopped and I heard city sounds, I felt something strange. Not relief, but panic. Because now I was inside. And now the challenge was to survive. Paris looked beautiful in pictures. But the city I saw with my own eyes was gray, cold, and hurried. Nobody met my gaze. Nobody cared where I'd come from. I found shelter in a basement in Saint-Denis, living with others like me. We shared dirty mattresses. We shared pain. The smell of mold and cigarettes was constant, but it was better than the wet ground in Calais. I started looking for work. I took odd jobs at construction sites, carrying rubble, clearing land, jobs no one here wants to do. I worked twice as hard for half the pay. No contract, no guarantees, no respect. But I smiled. At least I was breathing. They call me illegal. They say I came to steal. But none of them want the jobs I do. None of them can bear the weight I carry. They look at me suspiciously, but buy the bread my hands bake. I survived 7 borders. I crossed forests, seas, entire cities without knowing if I'd see another day. And yet here, they say I'm the problem. They call me an invader. But an invader is someone who destroys. All I tried to do was rebuild. Paris welcomed me with the cold silence of someone who pretends not to see you. There was no flag, no smile, just streets, concrete, and suspicion. For weeks I slept in a basement rented by an acquaintance, full of thin mattresses, peeling walls, and the smell of mold. I lived with other men who, like me, were trying to hold on to the little humanity we had left. We bumped into each other in the narrow hallway, shared soap, shared silence. Finding work was another war. Without documents, without language, without support. I woke up before sunrise and went to spots where construction bosses came looking for hands. They wouldn't even look at our faces. They shouted the neighborhood name, the task, and whoever got there first was hired. I carried cement, built walls, swept debris, cleaned portable toilets. They paid me in cash, always less than promised, but I accepted it. Not because I was stupid, but because the alternative was starving. I learned to walk without being noticed, to enter places silently, to lower my head, to smile when treated like a dog, to swallow my pride. One day, a man shoved me on the street just because he heard me speaking Arabic with another immigrant. I stood still, didn't react, because I knew that if I did, I would become the problem. Because my beard bothers them. Because my name scares them. Because my past doesn't fit into their system. Yet, I kept going. I worked through back pain, fever, and injured feet. One day I fainted on a pile of cement bags. They woke me with a kick and told me to leave. The next day I was back, at another construction site, hands trembling, because here, if you stop, you disappear. And I couldn't disappear. There were people waiting for me on the other side of the world. I send money to my wife once a month. It's not much, but it's all I can save. She still lives in the same house, now with double the fear. I promised I'd bring her here. I haven't managed yet, but I keep trying. Every penny I save here means one less day of suffering there. Nobody sees that. People in Paris look at me like an intruder. They think because I'm Muslim, I'm a risk, that my faith makes me an enemy. But what moves me isn't hate, it's longing. It's the desire to rebuild what was taken from me. Religion for me isn't a weapon, it's shelter. I pray quietly in a corner whenever I can. Sometimes in a bathroom at work, sometimes in a hidden alley, just to remind myself I'm still human. I've tried seeking official help. They sent me from one place to another. One piece of paper here, another there. They treated me as if I were begging favors, as if wanting to survive was an offense. I've been refused entry to hospitals because I lacked documents. I've been told I should return to my country, as if I could ever forget the smell of blood and smoke I left behind. I try hard to learn French. I bought a used dictionary at a second-hand bookstore. I read on the subway, listen to the radio, practice repeating phrases. But the truth is, they don't want to hear me. Even when I speak correctly, all they hear is my accent. And this accent is my sentence. No matter how much I try to adapt, they'll always see me as the other, the stranger, the invader. If I'm an invader, why do they rely on me to build their cities? Look around. Who cleans the streets? Who carries construction on their backs? Who delivers food, sweeps galleries, unloads trucks at dawn? We do. Invisible by day, essential by night. Yet they still call us the problem. We are the pillars holding up the roof they pretend shelters us. I don't want pity. I don't want charity. I just want to exist with dignity. To walk without fear. To breathe without hiding. To look ahead and see a future. Today, survival is all I have. I live day by day. Pain in my body. Weight in my soul. But I keep going. Sometimes, when I pass by a park, I see families sitting, children playing, laughter floating through the air. And for a moment, I imagine myself there with my wife, my children. I imagine a normal life, a life without fleeing, without temporary zip codes. But the thought quickly fades. Someone always stares, breaking the spell. The city is beautiful, but it doesn't want me. I walk through Paris like someone walking on glass. One wrong step, and everything shatters. But I won't apologize for being here. I owe nothing to anyone. What I faced to reach this sidewalk, no one could bear even in a nightmare. Yet here I am, standing, working, surviving. In France they call me an invader, but none of them know the road I had to cross to get here. None of them spent 3 days without food, trapped inside a dark truck, with their stomachs stuck to their ribs and fear stuck to their soul. They think they know who I am because they see my face in the subway, my simple clothes, my silence. But they know nothing. I was a man with a future. Today, I'm an ignored number, a body used to lift concrete and disappear at the end of the shift. Still, I don't regret it, because even though I'm treated as leftovers, I still have a choice. And my choice is to resist. I don't want applause. I don't want medals. I only want them to stop hating me for existing. I'm not a threat. I'm the reflection of a world they helped destroy. When they close doors and build walls, they pretend they're protecting themselves. But they're only ignoring reality. A reality that walks through the streets of Paris carrying cement bags on its back and shattered dreams in its pocket. Today, when I look in the mirror, I see a man marked by life, but still whole. A man who doesn't bow, even when everything is against him. If I survived until now, it wasn't by luck. It was through struggle, through faith, through stubbornness. You think I'm an invader, because you only see the end point of my journey. But if you had seen the beginning, if you'd felt on your skin what I felt, maybe you'd call me something else. What you call invasion, I call survival. What you call threat, I call consequence. France sees me as a problem. But if it had been up to me, I'd still be home today with my wife, fixing televisions. Leave a comment about what you think of my story, invader or survivor.